Miguel Hernandez checked his watch as the taxi pulled up to the Ocean View Grand Hotel. They were running a little late, but still had plenty of time to check in, freshen up, and make it to the opening reception of the Miami Inclusive Arts Festival. "We're here, Lucas," Miguel said, gently patting his son's knee. "This place looks even better than the pictures." Lucas pressed his face against the window, his eyes widening at the sight of the gleaming white hotel with its palm-lined entrance. "Wow, Dad, it's huge." Miguel smiled at his son's enthusiasm. At 19, Lucas still approached the world with a childlike wonder that Miguel both cherished and worried about. That innocence had remained untouched, despite the harsh realities they'd sometimes faced together. As the driver unloaded their luggage, Miguel took a moment to straighten Lucas's collar. "Remember what we talked about? This is a big weekend for you. Your paintings are going to be seen by hundreds of people." Lucas nodded earnestly, his dark eyes, so much like his late mother's, shining with excitement. "I'm going to be professional," he said carefully, pronouncing each syllable with deliberate precision. "You always make me proud," Miguel replied, feeling the familiar ache in his chest whenever he thought about how Maria would have loved to see the talented young man their son had become. The hotel lobby was a marvel of modern luxury. Marble floors that gleamed like mirrors, chandeliers that caught the Florida sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, and sleek furniture arranged in intimate groupings. Miguel approached the reception desk with Lucas following closely behind, pulling his own small suitcase. "Good afternoon," Miguel said to the receptionist, a woman with platinum blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun. Her name tag read, Veronica. "Checking in for Hernandez. We have a reservation for 5 nights." Veronica glanced up from her computer, her professional smile freezing when her gaze shifted from Miguel to Lucas. The change in her expression was subtle but unmistakable. The slight widening of her eyes, the tightening of her lips. "One moment, sir," she said, her fingers tapping rapidly on the keyboard. "Hernandez, I'm not seeing your reservation." Miguel frowned. "That's strange. I confirmed it yesterday. It should be under Miguel Hernandez, 2 adjoining rooms." As Veronica continued searching, Lucas wandered a few steps away, admiring a large tropical fish tank built into the wall. He pressed his palm against the glass, following the movement of a bright blue fish. "Lucas," Miguel called gently, "come stand by me while we check in." When Lucas returned to his father's side, Veronica's eyes narrowed. She lowered her voice, though not enough. "Sir, is he with you?" The question hung in the air for a moment before Miguel answered. "Yes, this is my son, Lucas." Veronica leaned forward, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "I'm afraid we might not have appropriate accommodations for special needs guests. Perhaps another hotel would be better suited." "My son doesn't have special needs in terms of accommodations," Miguel interrupted firmly. "We just require the 2 adjoining rooms I reserved." Lucas, sensing the tension, moved closer to his father. "Dad? Is something wrong?" Before Miguel could answer, Veronica's expression hardened. She stood up straighter and spoke in a voice loud enough to draw the attention of nearby guests. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to get away from the desk. We have other guests waiting, and you're—" She paused, glancing at Lucas. "Situation is holding up the line." Miguel felt as if he'd been struck. "Excuse me?" "Your son," Veronica said, making no attempt to lower her voice now. "His presence would disturb our other guests. This is a luxury establishment, and we have standards to maintain." The lobby seemed to go quiet. Miguel was acutely aware of people staring, of Lucas shrinking behind him, one hand clutching the back of his father's suit jacket, a gesture he hadn't made since he was a small child. With deliberate calmness, Miguel reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He placed it on the counter and pressed record. "Could you please repeat what you just said?" he asked, his voice steady despite the fury building inside him. Veronica glanced at the phone, then back at Miguel with a dismissive smirk. I said your son would disturb our other guests. Surely you understand that a 5-star hotel isn't the appropriate place for someone with his condition." In that moment, Miguel could have revealed who he was. Just 3 weeks ago, his company, Hernandez Global Investments, had finalized the purchase of the Oceanic Hotel Group, which included this very establishment. It wasn't public knowledge yet. The official announcement was scheduled for the following month, but one word from him would wipe that smirk off Veronica's face. Instead, he stopped the recording and slipped the phone back into his pocket. "Lucas," he said, turning to his son whose eyes had filled with tears, "we're going to find another place to stay." Lucas nodded, his head down. "Did I do something wrong, Dad?" The question broke something in Miguel. "No, mijo. You did nothing wrong. Some people just need to learn how to be human beings." Miguel gathered their luggage and guided Lucas toward the exit, feeling the stares of other guests following them. Outside, he hailed another taxi, and as they waited, he pulled out his phone again and made a call. "James, it's Miguel. I need you to book us rooms at the Bayfront Suites immediately, and then I need you to set up an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning." "Yes, it's about the Oceanic acquisition. There are going to be some changes." Once in the taxi, Miguel turned to Lucas, who sat quietly looking out the window. He'd always tried to shield his son from the cruelty that could exist in the world, but moments like this made him question whether he'd done Lucas a disservice by not better preparing him for such encounters. "I'm sorry that happened," Miguel said softly. Lucas turned to him, his expression thoughtful rather than upset. "That lady didn't like me because I have Down syndrome." It wasn't a question, and the matter-of-fact way Lucas said it made Miguel's heart ache even more. Some people judge others without knowing them. It says everything about them and nothing about you. "Mom always said people who don't know better just need to be taught," Lucas replied. Miguel smiled at the memory of Maria's optimism. Even during her final days, when cancer had ravaged her body, she'd remained convinced of people's capacity to grow and change. It was one of countless things he missed about her. "Your mom was very wise," he said. At the Bayfront Suites, the check-in process was smooth and respectful. The staff greeted Lucas directly, asking him questions rather than talking over him to Miguel, a small courtesy that always spoke volumes about a person's character. Once they were settled in their rooms, Miguel sat on the edge of Lucas's bed as his son carefully unpacked his special travel case of art supplies. The Miami Inclusive Arts Festival had selected 3 of Lucas's paintings for display, an achievement that had filled their household with excitement for months. "Are you still looking forward to the festival tomorrow?" Miguel asked. Lucas arranged his brushes in perfect order before answering. "Yes, but I keep thinking about that hotel lady. Try not to let her ruin your big weekend." "I'm not mad for me," Lucas said, surprising Miguel. "I'm sad for her. She doesn't know what she's missing." Miguel found himself speechless at his son's compassion. While he had been plotting a corporate takeover that would result in Veronica's immediate termination, Lucas was feeling sorry for her limited worldview. Later that night, after Lucas had fallen asleep, Miguel sat on the balcony of his hotel room overlooking Biscayne Bay. His phone buzzed with messages from his executive team who were scrambling to prepare for the emergency meeting he'd called. His legal counsel had already drafted the termination paperwork for Veronica and a probationary notice for the hotel manager who had hired and failed to properly train her. But Maria's voice echoed in his mind, along with Lucas's words from earlier. Was firing Veronica justice or vengeance? Would it teach her anything, or just reinforce whatever bitterness had caused her behavior in the first place? Miguel had built his fortune from nothing, starting with a small landscaping business after aging out of the foster care system at 18. Through determination and strategic risks, he'd expanded into property maintenance, then property management, and finally real estate development and investment. Along the way, he'd encountered plenty of people who underestimated him because of his background or his accent or the color of his skin. But becoming a father had changed him. And then becoming a single father to a son with Down syndrome had transformed him again, making him both more protective and more conscious of the world he wanted Lucas to inherit. The question that kept him awake now was not whether to fire Veronica, that was non-negotiable, but what to do with the hotel itself. He'd acquired the Oceanic Hotel Group as a purely financial investment, but now he saw an opportunity for something more meaningful. Miguel pulled out his phone and recorded a voice memo. Project New Horizon, convert Ocean View Grand into model of inclusive hospitality, full accessibility renovations, hiring initiative for staff with disabilities, training program for all employees on disability awareness and inclusion. He paused, looking out at the Miami skyline glittering against the night sky. Invite the woman from today to reapply after completing sensitivity training, he added finally. Everyone deserves a second chance to be better. He didn't know if Veronica would take such an opportunity, but offering it would honor both Maria's belief in redemption and Lucas's natural compassion, qualities that, despite his business success, Miguel still strived to embody more fully himself. Tomorrow would bring the beginning of the festival, a board meeting that would surprise his executives, and the first steps toward transforming an ugly incident into something that could change lives far beyond his and Lucas's. But for tonight, he allowed himself to feel the full weight of what had happened. The hurt in his son's eyes, the anger in his own heart, and the uncomfortable recognition that his impulse to demolish anything that threatened Lucas might not always be what his son truly needed. Miguel Hernandez had spent his life building things, a business empire, a home for his family, a future for his son. Now he faced a different kind of construction project, building a bridge between the world as it was and the world as it should be. And somehow he knew that Lucas would be the one showing him how to do it. Miguel arrived at the conference room of Hernandez Global Investments at precisely 7:30 a.m. He had slept little, but felt energized by his sense of purpose. The sun was just beginning to rise over Miami's skyline, casting a golden glow through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the 32nd floor office. "Good morning," he said as he entered the room where his executive team waited. 4 people sat around the polished mahogany table: James Chen, his chief financial officer and oldest friend; Sofia Rodriguez, head of legal; Derek Thompson, operations director; and Amara Washington, who led public relations. "This is unusual, even for you," James said with a concerned smile. In 20 years of friendship, he had never seen Miguel call an emergency meeting with so little explanation. Miguel placed his phone on the table and played the recording from the previous day. The room fell silent as Veronica's voice filled the space. "Your son would disturb our other guests. Surely you understand that a 5-star hotel isn't the appropriate place for someone with his condition." Amara's hand flew to her mouth. Sophia's eyes narrowed. Derek shook his head in disbelief. "That happened yesterday at the Ocean View Grand," Miguel said. "I want immediate action." "We'll handle it," James assured him. "The receptionist will be terminated today." "That's just the beginning," Miguel replied, sliding a folder to each person at the table. "These are my plans for the hotel." The team opened their folders, exchanging glances as they reviewed the contents. "Miguel," Sophia said carefully, "this goes far beyond addressing one incident of discrimination. You're talking about completely renovating the property and changing its entire business model." "Yes," Miguel confirmed without hesitation. "The Ocean View Grand will become a flagship for accessibility and inclusion in the hospitality industry." Derek looked concerned. "The renovations alone will cost millions, not to mention the training programs and hiring initiatives. The board will need convincing." "I'm not asking for the board's permission," Miguel said firmly. "I'm informing you of my decision as majority shareholder." James leaned forward. "Miguel, we all support the principle here, but as your CFO and friend, I have to point out that this is an emotional response to what happened to Lucas." Miguel's expression softened slightly. "It is emotional, yes, but it's also strategic. We have an opportunity to differentiate this property in a crowded market while addressing a real need." How many luxury hotels truly cater to guests of all abilities? It could be a publicity nightmare if handled poorly, Amara warned, or a powerful brand statement if done right. Then we'll do it right, Miguel said. I want construction to begin within 2 weeks. Sophia, prepare the termination for the receptionist and probation notice for the manager. Derek, start interviewing contractors today who specialize in accessible design. Amara, develop a communication strategy that emphasizes opportunity rather than punishment. This isn't about revenge, it's about progress. As his team nodded their understanding, Miguel felt a curious mix of satisfaction and unease. The words sounded right, but he couldn't deny the anger still burning within him when he thought of Lucas's hurt expression. That afternoon, Miguel sat in the back row of the exhibition hall, watching with pride as Lucas spoke with attendees about his paintings. The Miami Inclusive Arts Festival had transformed a waterfront event space into a gallery showcasing works by artists with various disabilities. Lucas stood beside his 3 paintings, which hung prominently on a wall near the entrance. The largest piece, a vibrant depiction of Miami's skyline at sunset, where buildings seemed to dance and sway with emotion rather than architectural precision, had already attracted attention from several collectors. "Your son is very talented," said a voice beside Miguel. He turned to find a woman in her 60s with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes. She extended her hand. "Elena Vasquez, Festival Director." "Miguel Hernandez," he replied, shaking her hand. "Thank you for giving Lucas this opportunity." Elena smiled. "Talent deserves recognition, regardless of who possesses it." She gestured toward Lucas, who was now enthusiastically explaining his painting technique to an elderly couple. "He has a remarkable ability to connect with people through his art." "He gets that from his mother," Miguel said softly. "Not just his mother," Elena replied knowingly. "I've heard about your work in the community." Miguel raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Miami is a small town in some ways," she explained. "Word travels, especially when someone with resources actually uses them to make a difference." Before Miguel could respond, his phone buzzed. It was a text from Sophia. "Termination complete. Manager on probation. Media already calling for comment." He excused himself and stepped outside to make a call. "Amara, what's happening?" "Someone at the hotel leaked the recording," Amara explained. "It's spreading on social media. We're getting requests for statements." Miguel pinched the bridge of his nose. "Has anyone identified Veronica yet?" "Not by name, but it won't take long. Do you want me to release our planned statement about the renovation project?" Miguel hesitated. He had wanted to approach the situation methodically, but social media had its own timeline. "Yes, but emphasize that this was already planned as part of our acquisition strategy. I don't want it to seem reactive." After ending the call, Miguel returned to the exhibition hall. Lucas was now chatting animatedly with a group of young art students. Seeing his son's confidence and joy, Miguel felt a renewed sense of certainty about his decision. Later that evening, they enjoyed dinner at a small Cuban restaurant in Little Havana, a place Miguel had frequented since his early days in Miami. The owner, Roberto, had known Lucas since he was a baby and always treated him with the perfect balance of affection and respect. "So big art star now," Roberto said as he placed a plate of ropa vieja in front of Lucas. "Soon you'll be too famous to visit old Roberto." Lucas grinned. "Never. Your food is better than famous food." Roberto laughed and turned to Miguel. "I saw the news about that hotel. People are talking." Miguel nodded, unsurprised that word had spread so quickly. "It shouldn't have happened." "No, it shouldn't," Roberto agreed. "But your response, that's something people respect. Creating jobs, making changes, that's better than just getting angry." "I'm still angry," Miguel admitted quietly. Roberto patted his shoulder. "Of course you are. You're a father." He glanced at Lucas, who was happily focused on his meal. "But you're teaching him something important, how to turn pain into purpose." The phrase stayed with Miguel throughout dinner and into the evening as he and Lucas returned to their hotel. Pain into purpose. It was what Maria would have done. The next morning, as Lucas prepared for his second day at the festival, Miguel received another call from Amara. "We have a situation," she said. "A local news station tracked down Veronica James. She gave an interview." Miguel's jaw tightened. What did she say? She admitted her behavior was unprofessional, but claimed she was following unofficial company policy to maintain the hotel's exclusive atmosphere. She also mentioned she's a single mother with 3 children, including one with diabetes who needs expensive medication. The story is gaining sympathy. Miguel closed his eyes, trying to process this new information. Is she lying about her personal situation? No, we've confirmed those details. The medical bills are substantial. A complex mix of emotions washed over Miguel. His anger toward Veronica hadn't diminished, but now it was joined by an uncomfortable awareness of her struggles. He thought of Lucas's words about feeling sad for the receptionist and of Maria's belief that people could change if given the chance. "Keep me updated," he told Amara, "and find out more about her son's medical situation, discreetly." When he hung up, he found Lucas watching him with curious eyes. "Was that about the hotel lady?" Lucas asked. Miguel considered deflecting but decided on honesty. "Yes, she's having some problems." Lucas nodded thoughtfully. "Is she sorry for what she did?" "I don't know," Miguel admitted. "Maybe a little." "Mom always said you have to give people a chance to fix their mistakes," Lucas said, adjusting the collar of his shirt in the mirror. "Otherwise, how will they learn?" Miguel watched his son, struck once again by how much wisdom Lucas possessed. Wisdom that had nothing to do with IQ scores or academic achievements, but came from a deep well of emotional intelligence that Miguel sometimes envied. "You're right," he said. "People need chances to learn and grow." By the end of the week, the story had evolved in unexpected ways. Public opinion had split between those demanding justice for Lucas and those expressing concern for Veronica's children. The hotel manager had publicly apologized and announced his own resignation, and Miguel's plans for renovating the Ocean View Grand had been praised by disability advocacy groups across the country. On their last night in Miami, as Lucas packed his art supplies, now including a festival award for Most Innovative New Artist, Miguel made a decision. He called James. "I want to create a foundation," he said without preamble. "What kind of foundation?" James asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. "For employment opportunities for people with disabilities, and I want to start with the hospitality industry." "I'll have the paperwork ready when you return," James replied. "And Miguel, what about Veronica James?" Miguel looked at Lucas, who was carefully wrapping his paintbrushes in cloth, each one treated with loving care. "Find out if she's interested in education," Miguel said finally. "If she is, offer her a scholarship for a degree in hospitality management, contingent on completing extensive diversity training, and make sure her son's medical needs are covered anonymously in the meantime." After hanging up, Miguel sat beside Lucas on the bed. "You know what I realized this week?" he asked his son. Lucas looked up. "What?" "That sometimes you're the one teaching me, not the other way around." Lucas smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners, just like Maria's used to do. "That's what family is for, Dad. We teach each other." Miguel pulled his son into a hug, feeling the tension of the past week finally begin to dissolve. The incident at the hotel had opened old wounds, memories of times when he'd been judged, dismissed, or underestimated. But it had also opened new possibilities for both him and Lucas. Tomorrow, they would return home to their normal routine. But Miguel knew things would never be quite the same. Something had shifted in their relationship. For years after Maria's death, he had seen himself primarily as Lucas's protector. Now he was beginning to see himself as Lucas's partner. And perhaps that had been Maria's final gift to them both. The space to grow, not just as individuals, but as a team, each with their own strengths, their own wisdom to share, and their own unique way of transforming pain into purpose. 3 months had passed since the incident at the Ocean View Grand Hotel. Summer had given way to fall, though in Miami the change was subtle, a slight cooling of the air, a shift in the quality of light. Miguel stood in the hotel lobby, now barely recognizable from that fateful day. Construction crews had worked around the clock to transform the space according to his vision. The marble floors remained, but now featured subtle textured pathways to guide visually impaired guests. The reception desk had been redesigned with 2 heights, one standard, one accessible for wheelchair users. Signage throughout the lobby included braille, and a large touchscreen display offered information in multiple languages, including American Sign Language. "What do you think?" Derek asked, joining Miguel in the center of the lobby. "It's exactly what I imagined," Miguel replied, turning slowly to take in every detail. "How are we on the hiring timeline?" Derek consulted his tablet. "We've filled 60% of positions. The response to our inclusive hiring initiative has been overwhelming. We're being very selective, making sure we get the right people." Miguel nodded approvingly. When he'd announced that 30% of the hotel's staff would include people with various disabilities, industry insiders had predicted failure. But Miguel had structured the initiative carefully, providing comprehensive training and creating a mentorship program that paired new hires with experienced hospitality professionals. "And the training program?" "Every staff member has completed the basic diversity and inclusion modules," Derek reported. "The advanced training begins next week, just before the soft reopening." Miguel checked his watch. "Lucas will be here soon with his art installation team. Make sure they have everything they need." As Derek walked away, Miguel's phone rang. It was Sophia. "How did the meeting go?" he asked without preamble. "Better than expected," Sophia replied. "The City Council unanimously approved the proposal to adopt our accessibility standards as guidelines for all new hotel developments in Miami Beach. They're calling it the Hernandez Standard." Miguel felt a surge of satisfaction. What had begun as a response to discrimination was evolving into something much larger, a movement that could transform the entire hospitality industry. "There's something else," Sophia continued, her tone shifting slightly. "Veronica James has completed the diversity training program. In fact, the instructor says she showed exceptional engagement." Miguel was silent for a moment. In the months since the incident, he'd deliberately avoided updates about Veronica, leaving that aspect of the situation to his team. The anonymous arrangement to cover her son's medical expenses was in place, and she had accepted the scholarship offer for hospitality management courses. Beyond that, he hadn't wanted to know. "She wrote you a letter," Sophia added. "I can have it sent to your office." "Email it to me," Miguel said after a pause. "I'll read it today." As he ended the call, the main doors opened, and Lucas entered with 2 young men carrying large tubes that contained his rolled-up canvases. At 20, dressed in a button-down shirt and jeans, with his dark hair neatly combed, Lucas looked every bit the professional artist he was becoming. "Dad," Lucas called, his face lighting up. "This place looks amazing." Miguel embraced his son. "Just wait until you see where your paintings will hang." Since the festival, Lucas's artistic career had gained momentum. A gallery in Miami's art district had featured his work in a group exhibition, and he'd sold 3 paintings to private collectors. The confidence this success had given him was evident in the way he carried himself, shoulders back, head high, meeting people's eyes directly. Miguel led Lucas and his team to the main wall of the lobby, a space previously occupied by a bland hotel chain painting. Now it would showcase a triptych, 3 connected paintings, that Lucas had created specifically for the new Ocean View Grand. "This is perfect," Lucas said, examining the wall thoughtfully. "The lighting is just right." As Lucas directed the installation of his artwork, Miguel stepped away to check his email. Sophia had already forwarded Veronica's letter. He hesitated before opening it, unsure if he was ready to revisit the emotions of that day. Finally, he began to read. "Dear Mr. Hernandez, There are no words that can adequately express my remorse for how I treated you and your son at the Ocean View Grand. My behavior was inexcusable, and I have spent these months reflecting deeply on my actions and their impact. The training program you sponsored has opened my eyes to my own prejudices I didn't even realize I held. I've learned that what I perceived as professionalism was actually discrimination dressed up in corporate language. The hotel's unofficial policy of maintaining an exclusive atmosphere was nothing more than a way to exclude people who didn't fit a narrow definition of what a luxury hotel guest should look like. As a mother, I am especially ashamed. I would be devastated if someone treated my children the way I treated your son. The irony that my own child has a medical condition, one that makes him different in the eyes of some, only adds to my shame. I don't expect or ask for forgiveness. But I do want you to know that your response to my cruelty has changed my life in ways I never imagined. The educational opportunity you've provided has given me hope for a better future for my family, and the anonymous assistance with my son's medical expenses, which I strongly suspect came from you, meant that I didn't have to choose between his health and our home. I am now volunteering with a local disability advocacy group, and I hope to use my education to create more inclusive environments in the hospitality industry. The lessons I've learned from this experience will guide everything I do going forward. With deepest gratitude and remorse, Veronica James Miguel read the letter twice before putting his phone away. A complex mix of emotions washed over him, the lingering anger at the memory of that day, but also a sense of satisfaction that something positive had emerged from the ugliness. He watched Lucas directing the art installation with quiet authority, pointing to exactly where he wanted each painting positioned. The middle piece in the triptych depicted a diverse group of people gathered in what was clearly the hotel lobby, their figures rendered in Lucas's distinctive style, slightly abstracted but deeply human, each one radiating light from within. "I think we need to move this one about 2 inches to the left," Lucas was saying. "It needs to be the exact center of the wall." Miguel smiled. There had been a time, not so long ago, when Lucas would have looked to him for confirmation before giving such directions. Now, he spoke with the confidence of someone who knew his own mind. The trip to Miami had marked a turning point in their relationship. In the months since, Miguel had made a conscious effort to step back, allowing Lucas more independence. It hadn't been easy. His instinct to protect his son remained strong, but he'd recognized that true protection meant empowering Lucas to navigate the world on his own terms. "Mr. Hernandez," a voice interrupted his thoughts. Miguel turned to find a young woman in a hotel uniform. Her name tag identified her as Mia, Guest Relations Manager. "The media representatives are starting to arrive for the tour," she said. "Would you like me to show them in now or wait until the art installation is complete?" "Let's wait," Miguel decided. "I want them to see the lobby in its finished state." Mia nodded and turned to go, moving with the slight asymmetrical gait that indicated a prosthetic limb, something Miguel wouldn't have noticed a few months ago, but now registered as simply one aspect of human diversity. The reopening of the Ocean View Grand had attracted significant media attention. What had begun as a story about discrimination had evolved into something more hopeful, a case study in how businesses could create truly inclusive environments. Industry publications were calling it the Hernandez model, and several other hotel chains had reached out to inquire about implementing similar changes. As the final painting was secured to the wall, Lucas stepped back to evaluate the completed installation. The triptych transformed the space, bringing warmth and humanity to the sleek lobby. Hotel staff members gathered to admire the artwork, their expressions revealing genuine appreciation rather than obligatory politeness. "It's beautiful, Lucas," Miguel said, joining his son. "Your mother would be so proud." Lucas nodded, his eyes glistening slightly at the mention of Maria. "She always said art should make people feel something. I hope this makes people feel welcome." "It absolutely does," Miguel assured him. "Are you ready to talk to the press? They'll want to hear from the artist." A flicker of nervousness crossed Lucas's face. then resolved into determination. "I'm ready." As they prepared to greet the media representatives, Miguel's phone buzzed with a text from Amara. "The CNBC interview is confirmed for next week. They want to focus on the foundation launch and the training program." The foundation, officially named the Maria Hernandez Foundation for Inclusive Employment, was set to launch the following month. Its first initiative was a comprehensive training program for the hospitality industry, teaching hotels and restaurants how to create accessible environments and successfully employ people with disabilities. When Miguel had presented the foundation plan to his board of directors, he'd encountered resistance from several members who saw it as a distraction from the company's core business. But he'd stood firm, arguing that social responsibility and profitability weren't mutually exclusive. The publicity surrounding the Ocean View Grand renovation had already led to a 15% increase in advance bookings, suggesting he might be right. The media tour went better than Miguel had anticipated. Reporters seemed genuinely impressed by the thoughtfulness of the renovations and the comprehensive nature of the hiring initiative. Lucas handled their questions with poise, explaining the symbolism behind his artwork and his hope that it would make guests of all abilities feel represented and welcomed. After the last reporter had left, Miguel and Lucas sat in the hotel restaurant, sharing a quiet dinner. "Things are really changing, aren't they?" Lucas observed, looking around at the diverse staff members working in the restaurant. "Not just here, but everywhere." "Change takes time," Miguel replied. "But yes, I think we're moving in the right direction." Lucas was quiet for a moment, seemingly lost in thought. Then he said, "I've been thinking about the Foundation's training program." "What about it?" "I think I could help," Lucas said. "Not just with the art stuff, but with the actual training. I could talk to businesses about what inclusion really means, from my perspective." Miguel considered this. Lucas had never expressed interest in speaking publicly about his disability. In fact, he'd always preferred to be recognized for his art rather than his Down syndrome. "Are you sure?" Miguel asked. "It would mean talking about personal things with strangers." Lucas nodded firmly. "I'm sure. Mom always said that change happens when people share their stories. Maybe it's time I shared mine." Miguel felt a surge of pride, tinged with the bittersweet awareness that his son was growing into a man with his own mission in the world. Maria would have loved seeing this moment. Lucas finding his voice not just through his art, but through advocacy as well. "The foundation would be lucky to have you," Miguel said simply. As they finished their meal, Lucas asked, "Will she be at the reopening, the receptionist?" The question caught Miguel off guard. "I don't know," he admitted. "Would you want her to be?" Lucas considered this thoughtfully. "Yes," he said finally. "I think it would be good for her to see what happened because of that day. Not to make her feel bad, but to show her that something good came from something bad." Miguel marveled once again at his son's capacity for forgiveness, a quality he himself still struggled with. Despite all the positive changes that had emerged from the incident, a part of him still harbored anger toward Veronica for the hurt she'd caused Lucas. Yet as he looked at his son across the table, confident, purposeful, undiminished by that painful experience, Miguel felt something in his heart begin to shift. Perhaps it was time to fully embrace the lesson Lucas was teaching him about the power of transformation, not just of spaces or organizations, but of hearts and minds as well. 6 months had passed since the incident at the Ocean View Grand Hotel. The crisp winter air of Miami, mild by northern standards but cool enough for light jackets, swept through the outdoor portion of the hotel's grand reopening celebration. White tents dotted the expansive pool deck, strings of lights created a canopy of stars overhead, and the gentle notes of a live jazz quartet floated through the evening air. Miguel adjusted his tie as he observed the gathering from a quiet corner. The event had drawn an impressive crowd: business leaders, disability advocates, local politicians, and media representatives. But what pleased him most was the diversity of the attendees. People of all abilities mingled naturally, some using wheelchairs, others communicating in sign language, many with visible and invisible disabilities. This was exactly what he had envisioned, a space where inclusion wasn't just a policy, but a lived reality. "Quite a transformation," said James, appearing at his side with 2 glasses of champagne. He handed one to Miguel, from discrimination lawsuit waiting to happen to model of inclusive hospitality in 6 months. Only you could pull this off. Miguel accepted the glass with a smile. "It wasn't just me. The whole team made this happen." "True," James conceded, "but it started with you and Lucas." He nodded toward the center of the party, where Lucas stood surrounded by a small group of admirers discussing the triptych that now dominated the hotel lobby. Lucas had chosen to wear a suit for the occasion, and the formal attire emphasized how much he had matured over these months. At 20, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone coming into his own. His artwork had garnered significant attention, with 3 more pieces having sold to collectors in the past month alone. "He's become quite the public speaker," James observed. Miguel nodded proudly. In recent weeks, Lucas had begun accompanying him to business meetings and foundation events, often sharing his perspective on inclusion. His natural charm and straightforward manner had proven remarkably effective at cutting through corporate jargon and getting to the heart of what accessibility really meant. "Mr. Hernandez?" A staff member approached respectfully. "The mayor has arrived and the ceremony will begin in 15 minutes. "Thank you, David," Miguel replied. The young man, one of the hotel's new hires with autism, nodded and moved efficiently back to his post at the entrance. Miguel made his way through the crowd, stopping briefly to greet various guests. The mayor of Miami, Elena Vasquez from the Arts Festival, and several business associates all offered congratulations on the hotel's transformation. "This is more than a renovation," the mayor told him. "It's a statement about the kind of city we want to be." "That's the idea," Miguel agreed. "Business can lead social change when we choose to." As he continued toward the stage area, Miguel spotted an unexpected face in the crowd. Veronica James stood near one of the refreshment tables, looking significantly different from the woman he remembered. Gone was the severe hairstyle and haughty expression. She wore a simple blue dress, her hair falling naturally around her shoulders, and her posture suggested nervousness rather than arrogance. Their eyes met across the space. After a moment's hesitation, Miguel nodded in acknowledgement. She returned the gesture with a tentative smile before looking away. Lucas appeared at his side. "Dad, is that her?" Miguel wasn't surprised that Lucas had recognized Veronica despite the changes in her appearance. His son had always been remarkably observant. "Yes," he confirmed. "I didn't know she would be here." "Amara invited her," Lucas explained. "I asked her to. Is that okay?" Miguel felt a complex mix of emotions, lingering anger tangled with grudging respect for the changes Veronica had reportedly made in her life. "It's okay," he said finally. "This night is about moving forward, not looking back." The ceremony began with brief remarks from the mayor and the head of the Miami Tourism Board, both praising the hotel's innovative approach to accessibility. Then, it was Miguel's turn to speak. He approached the microphone, scanning the attentive faces before him. "6 months ago, I stood in this hotel and experienced something no parent should ever have to witness: discrimination against my son. My first instinct was anger. I wanted justice, perhaps even revenge." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Miguel rarely spoke this personally in public settings. "But my son Lucas taught me something valuable that day," he continued. "He reminded me of what my late wife Maria always believed, that true change comes not from tearing things down, but from building something better in their place." He gestured to the hotel behind him. "That's what we've tried to do here. The Ocean View Grand isn't just accessible in the basic legal sense. It's designed to welcome everyone with dignity and respect. Our staff includes people of all abilities working together. Our training programs are being adopted by other hotels. And tonight, I'm proud to announce that the Maria Hernandez Foundation will be expanding its work nationwide, partnering with 5 major hotel chains to implement inclusive hiring practices across the country." Applause erupted. Miguel waited for it to subside before continuing. But this journey hasn't just been about transforming a hotel. It's been about transformation on a more personal level. He paused, gathering his thoughts. I've had to examine my own attitudes about protection versus empowerment. I've had to learn that sometimes the best way to advocate for someone is to step aside and let them advocate for themselves. He turned toward Lucas, who stood at the side of the stage. With that in mind, I'd like to invite my son Lucas to share his perspective. Lucas approached the microphone with measured steps. He took a deep breath, looking out at the sea of faces. Hi, everyone, he began, his voice steady despite the large audience. My name is Lucas Hernandez. I'm an artist. I'm a son. I have Down syndrome. But that's just part of who I am, not all of me. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the gathering before continuing. 6 months ago, someone told me I didn't belong in a place like this. That hurt. But my mom always said that when people hurt you, you have two choices. Let it make you bitter, or let it make you better. A murmur of appreciation rippled through the crowd. This hotel is about becoming better, Lucas continued. It's about showing that everyone belongs everywhere. The paintings I created for the lobby show all kinds of people together. Different colors, different abilities, different ages, all belonging in the same space. Miguel watched his son with swelling pride. Lucas spoke without notes, from the heart, connecting with the audience in a way no rehearsed speech could have achieved. But buildings are just buildings, Lucas said. It's people who need to change how they think. That's why the foundation's work is so important. It's not just about ramps and elevators and special rooms. It's about helping people see each other as people first. His gaze settled briefly on Veronica before moving on. Sometimes people make mistakes because they don't know better. But everyone deserves a chance to learn and grow. That's what my mom would say. Lucas ended his brief speech to enthusiastic applause. As he stepped back from the microphone, the crowd rose in a standing ovation. Miguel embraced his son, whispering, "Your mother would be so proud of you." The formal ceremony concluded, and the evening transitioned to a more relaxed celebration. The jazz quartet resumed playing, waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres, and guests mingled throughout the beautifully renovated space. Miguel was speaking with a group of potential foundation donors when he noticed Lucas approaching Veronica across the room. His first instinct was to intervene, but he held himself back, remembering his own words about empowerment versus protection. From a distance, he watched as his son introduced himself formally to the woman who had once dismissed him. Veronica's expression showed a mix of shame and gratitude as Lucas spoke to her. Though Miguel couldn't hear their conversation, he could see Veronica nodding, wiping away tears, and then shaking Lucas's hand with apparent sincerity. After a few minutes, Lucas excused himself and returned to the art display where several guests were admiring his work. Veronica remained where she was, composing herself before rejoining the gathering. Later, as the event was winding down, she approached Miguel as he stood alone near the pool's edge. "Mr. Hernandez," she said quietly, "I want to thank you for allowing me to be here tonight." Miguel studied her face, searching for the woman who had spoken so cruelly to his son. He found only genuine remorse in her eyes. "Lucas wanted you here," he replied simply. "He's an extraordinary young man," Veronica said. "He told me he forgives me." Her voice broke slightly. "I don't deserve that kindness." Miguel was silent for a moment, considering his response. "Forgiveness isn't about deserving," he said finally. "It's about choosing to move forward without carrying the weight of anger. Lucas understood that before I did." Veronica nodded. "I've completed the first semester of the hospitality management program. I'm at the top of my class." "Good," Miguel said. "The industry needs people who understand the importance of true inclusion." "I've been volunteering with the Down Syndrome Association too," she added. "Working with teenagers, it's opened my eyes in ways I never expected." Miguel felt the last of his anger beginning to dissolve. "Life has a way of bringing us full circle sometimes," he observed. "Will you apply for a position with the foundation when you complete your degree?" Surprise flickered across Veronica's face. "I hadn't considered that possibility." "Consider it," Miguel said. "Sometimes the most effective advocates are those who've experienced their own transformation." As Veronica thanked him and walked away, Miguel felt a profound sense of closure. The circle that had begun with an act of discrimination was completing itself with an opportunity for redemption, not just for Veronica, but for himself as well. The evening concluded with Lucas joining Miguel for a quiet moment on the hotel's terrace overlooking the ocean. The Miami skyline glittered against the night sky, a constellation of human-made stars reflecting on the dark water. "Mom would have loved this," Lucas said, gazing out at the view. "She would," Miguel agreed. "Though she probably would have done it all with less drama and more grace than I did." Lucas laughed. "Maybe. But you did it your way, and it worked." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment before Lucas spoke again. "Dad, I've been thinking about college." Miguel turned to him, surprised. They had discussed various art programs over the years, but Lucas had always been hesitant about the idea of college. "There's a program at Miami-Dade that combines art and advocacy," Lucas continued. "Students work with community organizations to create art for social change. I think I want to apply." Miguel felt a surge of emotion, pride, love, and a bittersweet awareness that his son was charting a course that would increasingly take him into the world on his own. "I think that sounds perfect for you," he said simply. "I'll need help with the application," Lucas admitted, "but I want to do as much as I can myself." Miguel nodded, understanding exactly what his son was asking for. Support without taking over, guidance without control. It was the balance he'd been learning to strike these past months. "Partners?" he asked, extending his hand. Lucas smiled, clasping his father's hand firmly. "Partners," he agreed. As they turned to rejoin the last of the guests, Miguel reflected on the journey that had brought them here. What had begun with pain had led to purpose. What had started as protection had evolved into partnership. And what could have remained a story about discrimination had transformed into one about growth, forgiveness, and the power of seeing people, truly seeing them, for who they are rather than what they seem. Some journeys came full circle, others spiraled outward, expanding into something greater than where they began. Looking at his son, confident, compassionate, and ready to make his own mark on the world, Miguel knew theirs was just beginning.